Hey everybody, welcome in the Red Zone. Sean Brown, Michael Johnson here, and it's time for our picks for the college football semifinals. Two semifinal games coming up, TCU, Michigan, Georgia, Ohio State. Before we do that, I want to address one little thing. Our last video we did where we picked the bowl games, we had sent our prayers and condolences to Mike Leach and his family. At the time we shot the video, Coach Leach had not passed yet. The day we posted the video, he did. So it looks like when you watch the video, a little bit dated information. So we apologize for that, but we still want to send our prayers and condolences to his family.
Yeah.
He was a tremendous personality for college football, and college football is not going to be the same without him. It's just not. And they've done a lot to honor him. Their helmets, they're putting the pirate flag on the helmets.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Somebody got into the stadium, put a pirate flag at half mast.
Oh man.
I mean, it's great to see how people there have come out in support of him, and it's sad for college football. It really is.
Yeah, Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley both spoke at his funeral, and just unexpected, and we're saddened by it. Definitely going to be missed.
Okay, so we're not going to talk about anything else. There's been so many coaching changes and things happen, but you're not here for that. You're here for the college football playoff picks.
And we're actually recording on National Signing Day. So if we can, I'll take just a minute. I just wanted to update we don't really do recruiting, but it's something that I follow pretty closely, especially with OU. But at 10 was Tennessee, 9 was Notre Dame, who dropped a ton. They lost several commits in the last hour to number 7. So number 8 is Oklahoma, and number 7 is Oregon, swooping in with just defensive 5-stars all over the place. Number 6 is LSU, who had a great recruiting class. Number 5, Ohio State, you could say the same.
Well, they lost the number 1 overall quarterback at the last minute.
Yeah, that's true.
So they could have been higher.
So then you've got Miami at 4, which is pretty surprising, but I think they're taking full advantage of the NIL stuff.
Well, Miami's not a bad place to spend your college time. A
lot of distractions.
Yep.
Number 3 is perennial top 10, top 5, who doesn't show it on the field normally. Texas is number 3. They're always the national championship of the off season.
Yeah.
Just giving you a little hard time there, Texas fans. Georgia comes in at number 2, and Alabama getting back on top. After
they got like 14 or 16 top 100 players.
So they had 6 5-stars according to 247.com and 24 stars, 1 3-star. So that's probably a punter.
2 things here. Number 1, I don't follow recruiting at all anymore because half these players will be in the transfer portal next year.
That's exactly
right. So I don't
right.
really care who was the top recruiting class. It's meaningless.
Yeah.
Meaningless because half these kids won't get to play their first year. They'll be mad. They don't want to compete. They'll jump ship and they'll go play somewhere else. The last thing we'll say before we get to the picks, Pitt coach saw an article today, said he has firsthand knowledge from multiple sources that at least 3 schools have offered Drake May $5 million to transfer.
Oh my gosh.
He's talked about the NIL, the transfer portal, way out of control. Now schools are actually offering money. They're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to come. It's
right.
NIL is supposed to be.
That's been happening since it happened.
Let's see if Drake May transfers.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on that. But $5 million, my guess is if that's true, he's going to jump ship. We're going to know pretty quick which school it was.
Yeah, there are coaches. I forget which coach it was. Maybe Washington State's coach or NC State.
Washington State's coach. He was talking about how they're trying to poach players from his team.
Yeah, he said he had guys that coaches, not boosters, not collectives, coaches called the parents of these kids, and NCAA has got to do something about it.
Now they're begging Congress to get involved because the NCAA doesn't want to touch it.
Yeah.
So anyway, enough of that. Let's get to the pick. Okay, first semifinal game is TCU number 3 against Michigan, who's number 2. This is the VRBO Fiesta Bowl, 4 o'clock Eastern time on New Year's Eve. Sorry. So let's talk about this a little bit. I took some notes for some stats. We'll get into a little bit of that. I will be up front and tell you, and this isn't because I'm an Ohio State fan, but everybody loves the underdog story, and TCU is the underdog story. Last year it was Cincinnati. It was very unlikely Cincinnati would beat Alabama, but I wanted them to.
Yeah.
I want TCU to win this game. The reality of the fact is this. TCU has had to come from behind in more than half their games this year.
Yeah.
The last game, Max Duggan, who came up short against Kansas State, rushed for 110 yards on 15 carries and came up short. They cannot come from behind against Michigan. Michigan is too good. Their defense is too good. A couple of stats here. When it comes to red zone defense, Michigan is 31st, TCU 76th. Red zone offense, Michigan is 5th, TCU 80th. I mean, these are big disparities here.
Yeah.
Sacks allowed. Michigan is 10th. They've given up 13 sacks. I didn't even see TCU on the list. They were way down there.
Yeah.
Turnover margin. TCU 17th in turnover margin. Michigan 21st, so that's kind of close. And total defense. Michigan, the third-ranked total defense. TCU 74th. And if you've ever watched our show, if you follow what I talk about, if you're not a top 10, top 20 defense, you really don't have a shot in the college football playoff.
No.
Unless you're like a super offense, but TCU's not a super offense.
So, okay. You can kind of look at both those numbers, the total defense, and probably comparatively, you could move those extremes a little bit closer together. Yeah. Big Ten is not known for being a high-powered offensive league. Right. They're gonna put 300-pound linemen into the NFL. They're gonna have linebackers. Their defenses are gonna be outstanding. TCU plays in the Big 12, who, yes, Texas has been down, Oklahoma's been down, but it's still an offensive-driven league, I would say. Defense has gotten a little bit better, but we're not seeing just crazy consistency.
One thing teams have been able to do all year long against TCU, they've been able to run against TCU.
Yeah.
Every team's done it. Michigan, they're averaging 40 points a game. They're only giving up 13, and their defense is only giving up 277 total yards per game, only giving up 85 rushing yards per game. Where on the flip side of that, TCU's given up 385 yards total on defense. Michigan started the year with Blake Corum. Of course, he's not playing. We all know that. And then Edwards came in against Ohio State, and he was lights out. Bottom line, Michigan to me it's their offensive line who should get all the credit. I'm not saying Corum's not a good back. Not saying that at all. But I believe what Edwards did against Ohio State is why Corum didn't get invited to the Heisman ceremony, because Michigan, to me, their offense right now feels, remember back in the day with the Denver Broncos, they ran that zone blocking scheme, and it seemed like every year they had the best running back, and then he'd go somewhere for more money, the next guy steps up, and when they left, they didn't do much.
Yeah.
But it was not the back, it was the system. And I believe that's what we're seeing with Michigan. It is their offensive line. It is their system that made Corum successful. It is their system that makes Edwards successful. I do not believe TCU has a defense that can slow down Michigan. I don't think they can do it. The spread here is, I lost it. Hang on.
I think it's 6.5.
7.5. I believe.
7.5. Okay.
It is. Where's it at? It's 7.5. And I'm going to throw this out there. The over/under right now is 58.5. I would take the under in this, and I am going to take Michigan to cover 7.5.
So the last two games that Michigan played, they played against Purdue at home. They won 43-22, and they beat. Of course, they beat Ohio State at Ohio State 45-23. And I just want to let it be known that those two offenses are better than what you would normally face in the Big Ten. And that is about 7 points more than their average per game. So their defense is giving up 13.4. So in those last two games, they gave up 22 points and 23 points. I do think that TCU can definitely put up a better fight than Purdue. Not necessarily saying that they can put up a better fight than Ohio State. Ohio State, how many people were out due to injury? And
I also, too, I look at the Michigan-Purdue game as, I don't think Michigan was super hyped to play their best game. They just came off the win against Ohio State. You're playing a Purdue team that really you should walk all over.
But you could also say playing Illinois. Did they have they had Ohio State the very next week, and they won that game 19-17.
Right.
They beat Rutgers 52-17. They beat Nebraska 34-3. And speaking of injuries, in this game, I'm on covers.com, and they have one injury for TCU, and that is Quincy Brown. He has only played in one game this year, so not a huge loss. He only had 3 receptions for 31 yards, but 2 touchdowns. So I don't know if that was the first game. And then for Michigan, we've got, let's see, I think they had 4. So Blake Corum out for the season. Yeah. They've got William Wagner, a long snapper, out for the season. They have Caden Colasar, who is out for the season due to a knee injury, and Nikai Hill Green, which I don't have any stats, so that just says lower body injury. So probably not very much. Blake Corum is definitely the most production that you're losing. But
losing your starting long snapper could affect special teams. It comes down to a field goal,
it could,
things like
but
that. It could be.
I don't see, and I don't see stats because they don't track those stats. But I don't know how many games he played in this year.
Yeah.
Don't know if he was even the starting long snapper. But yeah, there's the 4 for Michigan and then the 1 for TCU. And if you know of any injuries that may have happened during practice, go ahead and drop it in the comments section. We'd love to know about it. And I'm sure other viewers, we've got, 10 days till?
Something like that. So 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10.
So, you'd have 10 days to read up on that and see if anything. And something could happen from now till then. I mean, these guys are practicing all week. And
we are doing a picks a little bit earlier than we normally would because of Christmas weekend.
Yeah.
So, yes, things could change. Keep that in mind. We're really wanting to give you the info. You make your decisions.
Yeah.
So, that being said, I said I'm taking Michigan cover 7.5. What's your pick?
Man, 7.5. I see it anywhere from like 7 to 10 points, Michigan winning. I would love for TCU to make it, but then I'd also not love for them to be the first Big 12 team to make it to the final.
I personally would love to see TCU win.
Yeah.
And get in a championship game, but there's a little bit of me that wants to see an Ohio State-Michigan rematch as well.
That would be pretty cool.
Although
it's hard to beat the same team twice.
Well, TCU couldn't do it, so
yeah.
So anyway, so are you taking Michigan?
I'm gonna take Michigan. Okay. I think if this ekes up close to 9 or 10 points, I'd maybe go TCU's way. I see them fighting back, but it being too little, too late.
I think barring any kind of like major announcement, like 4 guys from Michigan's kicked off the team or something, this is probably, it might go to 8. It's not going to move much because it's already been it's been a while since these spreads first came out, and so they haven't moved a whole lot.
Yeah, I could definitely see Michigan taking an early lead because that's kind of the trend with TCU. Yeah. Early lead, and then TCU finds a way to start fighting back and
Max Duggan's got a little bit of Tebow in him.
Yeah,
just doesn't lose.
Yeah,
So
I would say somewhere between Sam Ehlinger and Tim Tebow, somewhere in between there.
Okay.
It's just
all right.
And Colin Klein, who's actually Kansas State's, I think.
But regardless of what happens, it's been a heck of a year for TCU.
So, oh my gosh, nobody. Who said they were the Big 12 dark horse?
Yeah.
They were my dark horse. I didn't call them as the,
All right.
I didn't say they were going to win it. But
let's move on to the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, ESPN. The premier game, number 4 Ohio State, number 1 Georgia. Georgia is currently a 6.5-point favorite, and I did not look at the over/under. Give me one second.
So while you're looking at the over/under.
Over/under is 62 on this one.
Okay. So as far as injuries in that game, again, this is covers.com. I've got Ohio State at 6 injuries. And again, this could all change. It could all be, that I say one of these names because I was curious and picked, OU's just right under it says Daniel Parker. Well, he was suspended for a couple of days until it found out that a girl had pressed false charges. He's back with the team, but it still says he's out here. So some of these players could be back with the team. It might just be that they haven't updated their site. So I've got an O lineman out for the season, Avery Henry.
Is this Ohio State?
Yeah. Is he in the 2 deep at all?
I don't know. I mean, I have all the starting offense and defensive linemen, but I don't know about the depth.
We've got Travion Henderson out for season.
Smith and Jigba.
Jackson Smith and Jigba out for season. Then we have Lloyd McFarquhar. Okay. That's a cornerback out indefinitely. It was undisclosed. And then Evan Pryor out for season with a knee injury. And then Mitchell Melton, linebacker, out for season, knee injury. So that's
Melton, Pryor. They contribute. So
okay.
Okay. So and then you have Georgia.
That was So that was 6 for Ohio State, 4 for Michigan, and 1 for TCU. We've got 8 for Georgia. And the first one is an O-lineman, Ernest Green III. He is questionable for December 31st with a leg injury. Another questionable is Eric Gilbert, which he actually just jumped into the transfer portal. So I don't know if that means that he's not playing the game.
You can be in the transfer portal and still play. You can still be part of the team, I believe.
It's just weird that he's leaving. So another questionable is Ladd McConkey, wide receiver. Then out for season with a pectoral injury. Nolan Smith was a highly ranked, number 1 ranked player in the country, his recruiting class. Then you have defensive back Dan Jackson, out indefinitely with a foot injury. Linebacker C.J. Washington, out indefinitely with a neck injury. Let's see. Drew Bobo, O-lineman, out indefinitely with a shoulder injury. And running back Andrew Paul out for the season with a knee injury. So if you know of those players...
none of those names... I don't follow Georgia as close as like I do Ohio State.
Yeah.
None of those names pop out to me as
But at least if it's not a highly...
depth.
Right. If it's not a highly producing... player, it's still, what if your number 1 goes down? I mean, we saw what happened when Dylan Gabriel went out. We saw, I don't remember if Eric Gray was banged. I think Eric Gray was banged up a little bit, and then Marcus Major goes down. So, true freshman gets thrown into the fire there early. So
it could happen. Yeah. Okay. Couple things here. I want to sit here and I want to talk up Ohio State, and I want to say Ohio State has a chance. I had said in a couple of previous videos that I kind of liked the matchup offensive-defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much anymore. I just want to give you some comparisons here. So for Ohio State, their offensive line, you have Johnson Jr., he's 6'6", 310. Jackson, 6'4", 300. Whippler, 6'3", 300. Josh Fryer, 6'6", 320. And then DeWard Jones, 6'8", 359. He's the right tackle. He's the one I've told you about. When we have a good running back healthy, when you run off right tackle, he's going to move his guys 3 to 4 yards every single time.
Yeah.
And Georgia doesn't have anybody on the defensive line that's going to move him. They don't, unless they double team. But that being said, the rest of the matchups, if you look at Ohio State's defensive line, Tuamalu, he's 270, a redshirt freshman. Ty Hamilton, he's 294, redshirt sophomore. And then Taron Vincent, he's 300 pounds. He's a redshirt senior. So those are the 3. And then we're not talking about linebackers here. But when you compare that to Georgia's offensive line, they're 310, 320, 310, 315, 330. Georgia's offensive line wins that battle. They absolutely win the battle. Georgia's defensive line, 280, 295, 300. They slightly outweigh Ohio State's defensive line. I do believe Ohio State can run the ball if Mayan Williams is healthy. He is listed probably as their starter. We know Henderson's out. I'm not buying, I don't care what they say on camera, I'm not buying he's 100%. He might be 75 or 80%. He's had these injuries all year. I do not buy he's 100% healthy, even with the time off. After him, I don't get Ryan Day. I mean, when he was hired, he was great as offensive coordinator. I have no idea. I went back and watched the Michigan game again. I don't get it. I do not get that offense. I do not know why you had Dallin Hayden, a freshman, who was lights out carrying the ball for 2 straight games and doesn't play at all in that Michigan game. I get he doesn't catch the ball well out of the backfield. I get that he's not a great blocker because he's a freshman. But the kid can run. He's got moves. And when you have Mayan Williams out and you have Travion Henderson out, why are you not playing him?
Yeah.
There's now talk that after the playoffs, he's going to jump in the transfer portal and go home to Tennessee because he didn't play. He's got to be part of the game plan. He's got to be. I mean, instead, we played a guy who was a converted linebacker at running back who didn't really do that much. On top of that, with Ohio State, I know C.J. Stroud was a Heisman finalist. He came in with a lot of hype this year. C.J. Stroud is very one-dimensional. Look at his stats. He never runs the ball.
Yeah.
Georgia have no fear of him running the football. He's not going to run.
Yeah.
And against Michigan, the offense was 5-yard slants, bubble screens, try to get the ball in space, and Michigan kicked our butts, honestly.
C.J. Stroud looks like he lets...
He doesn't do well in big games when he's pressured. He doesn't.
Well, and it seems like he lets that pressure get to his head.
It does, yeah.
I always see him yelling at somebody or... and I don't know what he's yelling. You know, He could be yelling "good job" for all I know.
And he'll have 3 or 4 games. I mean, 3 or 4 plays in a game where he's hit Marvin Harrison Jr. for 20-plus yards.
Yeah.
And that's what you see on SportsCenter.
Yeah.
But what you don't see is the rest of the game where he's really struggling.
Yeah.
And he has struggled in games where they pressure him because he can't run or he's unwilling to run. I mean, that's got to change.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't be one-dimensional in this game. He can't. They got to get him running the ball. He's got to drop back in that pocket, and when they take away the pass, whether it's in zone or man-to-man, and there's a gaping hole in the middle of the field, he's got to go.
Yeah.
He's got to go. And if he's unwilling to do that, and we can't throw the ball more than about 5 or 10 yards downfield, then they can stack the line, and they're going to take away Mayan Williams, and we're not going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah.
Like, we've got to open things up, and Ryan Day can't rely on this dink and dunk short passing game, get the ball in screens and in outer space. No, that's not going to work. Georgia has a much better defense than Michigan. They really do. I mean, look at the stats. They're giving up 12 points per game, and here you go. Georgia, number 1 in red zone offense, number 1 in red zone defense. Ohio State, they're 3rd in red zone offense. Get this, Ohio State, at one point in the season, they were up there in red zone defense, 121st in red zone defense right now.
Man.
Ohio State's defense. 121st. Now, I will say this, especially against Michigan and some of those other games. The Ohio State offense, even though it can put up yards and put up points, there's a lot of 3 and outs there.
Yeah.
And when you do 3 and out, you don't give your defense time to rest.
Right.
And you can't expect these guys to hold them to 10 points, 15 points all game if you're going 3 and out on offense.
Yeah.
You got to move the ball, and you got to take time off the clock to give your defense rest. Sacks allowed. Georgia's number 1. They've only given up 7 sacks all year long. Ohio State's 5th. They've only given up 8. Turnover margin. Ohio State's 23rd. Georgia's 74th. They don't get turnovers. They don't. I mean, they don't get turnovers. Total defense. Georgia is 8th. Ohio State 12th in total defense. So Ohio State's not giving up the yardage, but when a team gets in the red zone, it's almost automatic they're getting in the end zone.
I'd be interested to go back and look at Jim Knowles' defense from Oklahoma State and see where they were at in red zone. They were really good across the board.
Yeah.
They were one of the best defenses in the Big 12 last year. But
right. One thing I remember about Oklahoma State.
For what they had.
I don't know where they ranked, but it did seem like very often that they would give up a lot of yardage, but as soon as a team hit the red zone, they couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's like Oklahoma State was like one of the top teams in the red zone.
Yeah.
So you can take all this information for what it's worth. The bottom line is, I think Georgia is, if they're healthy, they are a far superior football team.
Yeah.
Stetson Bennett makes plays when he needs to. He's not a Heisman. Well, he was a Heisman candidate. He doesn't have those stats.
Right.
But he takes care of the football. They don't turn over the football. He makes plays when he needs to make plays.
Well, and that's one thing you could say about...
And he will run when he needs to.
C.J. Stroud is that he protects the football as well. I think he only had 6 interceptions this year.
Yeah.
20-something touchdowns.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that he turns the ball over. It's just, but to me, a 3 and out is almost like a turnover. I mean, when as far as the game is concerned.
Yeah.
You know, when you're getting your defense right back on the field. So all that being said, we know what each one of these teams did this year.
37 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
It's 6.5. To be honest with you, I would take the over, which is the 62. I'd take the over, but I'm taking Georgia to cover 6.5. I think we have Georgia-Michigan in the championship game.
Yeah, I've got Georgia as well. And man, just really unlucky with the rotation of these games because and UGA got to pick it. You know, they got, as the number 1 team, they got to pick where they played, and that's in the rules. So they're playing in Atlanta.
Yeah, they get to pick. Well, to be honest with you, Ohio State seems like almost every year they play in the Fiesta Bowl, so I'm glad they're not in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, and Ohio State travels very, very well.
That will be, I mean, it's in Georgia's backyard, but there will be not more, at least half that stadium. The whole stadium's going to be red,
right?
But half of it, half that stadium's going to be Ohio State fans trying to chant OHIO and Georgia fans trying to drown them out.
Yeah.
So that would be a great game to be at. But I'll be honest with you, I think it was like 2018. I went to TCU Ohio State in Arlington, and paid like $350 a ticket. I won't do that anymore.
Wasn't worth it.
My days of paying that kind of money to go to games, I won't do it.
If you got a ticket for me, I'll go to the game with you. But
well, and on the flip side of that, I made a comment to somebody. These bowl games have been hideous with all the opt-outs.
Yeah.
They've been boring.
Yeah.
I mean, I told somebody, I said, you could give me a free ticket to one of these bowl games. Oh, I know what it was. It was the Cincinnati-Louisville game at Fenway Park. Fenway Park's not a good place. It might be a good experience to go. That is a terrible place to play a game on TV.
Yeah.
When they get down to the red zone on the goal line, the foul pole was right in the middle of the camera.
Oh, man.
Like you couldn't even see anything. It was terrible for TV.
It's not like they can take that down.
Right, and I told somebody online, I said, you could give me a free ticket to the game, pay my airfare, pay my hotel. I would not go to some of these bowl games.
The best game so far might have been the Jackson State game.
That was a good game. That was a good game. I mean, hats off to North Carolina Central for that win.
Yeah, but you've had Louisville just smash Cincinnati 24-7. You had Oregon State just
throttle Florida.
Yeah, and then Fresno State just beat the crap out of Washington State. BYU SMU came down to the wire, 24-23 game. North Texas Boise State. Man, all these FCS or Group of Five schools, they're really coming in hot with some of these not low, but just not a very big margin, win margin. You've got Toledo Liberty 21-19.
Yeah. Which, I mean, let's be honest. If Hugh Freeze is still at Liberty and they don't have any opt-outs, Liberty wins that game pretty big.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing. The Group of Five schools aren't losing guys like the Power Fives are for bowl games. They lose a few.
They're losing some of them.
But it's not as significant.
There's been some that play outside their competition. They get poached by these bigger schools and stuff.
I mean, it is getting, I don't know. I guess there's no point complaining about it. But the NIL and transfer portal, college football is, I'm losing interest in it. I really am. It's.
I mean, a lot of people are. I see a lot of people, and I've lost a lot of my not fandom, but I've lost a lot of my luster for recruiting, following recruiting, because you get a guy, and OU fans will know exactly. I'm not going to drop a name, but they'll know exactly who I'm talking about. You get a guy that's committed somewhere, and all year you hear it's OU, it's OU. He's going to flip to OU. He's going to flip to OU.
And then the day before.
And then, the day of, when he makes his announcement, OU's hat's nowhere to even be found on that table. Yeah. And then, picking this school. Yeah. And then, come to find out, a couple hours later, that he didn't even sign an NLI. He is still not signed with anybody. He just signed a blank sheet of paper or something, or maybe he signed it and didn't send it in. But these kids just
I'm so turned off by it. And listen, I like the Drake May thing. Look, if I'm a quarterback offered $5 million, I'm not turning that down as a freshman.
Yeah,
I don't blame him.
And now it depends on where it is. If I feel like I could go to that school and win there, then I maybe take that. But or go back to North Carolina and say, hey, I'm just telling you guys, this is what they're offering me.
It's just
what can you guys do?
I know. I just it just feels so dirty that these schools would do this. I know winning matters. I get it. Like I get what college football has become about.
You and I are from a different era. I mean, we're just from an era where if you
I played because I love the game.
Paying players was an insult. That was an insult to other, or that was your ammo against other schools. That hey, we're morally superior. Yeah. You guys have to pay players to get them to come. So.
Which I'm sure it's been happening. To a lesser extent. I mean, I'm sure all the way up before NIL.
Yeah.
There were players getting $100,000 to go to a school.
Oh, look at
but
all
it wasn't
these,
millions like now.
Go back and look at all the pictures, pre 2020 or 20.
Well, they had that one kid who went to Ole Miss who was supposed to go to Alabama, and then it turned out after the fact, like after he left school, he says he was paid $100,000 to go to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I wouldn't.
Was that Laramie Tunsil?
I don't remember who it was exactly. I just remember
saying on draft night that coaches paid him money. But no, all these players you see on their Instagram, and that they've got a brand new Dodge Charger. It's just like, you don't work. Like, what do you?
Well,
how'd you get that car?
And I mean, just the fact of, you go somewhere to a school. Okay, I hate to call out Drake May, but let's use Drake May for instance. Let's say he does take the money and switches schools after the stellar year he had as a freshman.
Yeah.
It's not just the money. It's all those other guys on the team who don't have NIL deals. And, I mean, they're counting on you to win next year.
Yeah.
And you just turn your back on them.
In a locker room, though, you understand there's a hierarchy. I mean, you do. Even playing high school football, I understood. The coaches were not coming to me and putting an arm around me. Like I was a linebacker and a wide receiver. Like they did not care about me.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, but they're going over to our quarterback and buttering him up.
Yeah, and I know that. I don't know. There's loyalty and honor has been lost in our society. Yeah. It's gone.
Yeah.
It is. It's gone. Very few people have it anymore, and I think that's the one thing that bothers me more than anything.
Yeah.
So
I'm laughing or smiling because we've gone completely.
Well, it doesn't matter. We made our picks first.
It was one of our last shows. So.
We made our picks first, so we both picked Georgia. We both picked Michigan. So, the good thing I will say is that when I tend to pick against Ohio State, they tend to prove me wrong. So
that would be nice. And TCU, hey, maybe they pull a surprise.
I mean, I would love to see an Ohio State-Michigan rematch for a national championship.
I know.
That would be incredible.
That
would be like OU and Texas for a national championship.
I've been watching this TCU team this year. I'm not rooting for them, but they have kind of become my de facto number 2 team since OU's been down.
Last thing I'll say about the game, I've seen several comments online on our videos and such. Dogs by 30. Dogs are going to win by 35. They're going to win by 25. No, they're not. The game's not going to be a blowout.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's going to be a blowout.
Yeah, Ohio State definitely has enough of on offense to stay in the game, I would think.
I think the key, like I said, the key is can they throw the ball downfield to open up the running game, and can they get some first downs and milk some clock to give their defense time to rest between series?
Yeah.
If they can do that, Ohio State has a chance.
Yeah.
If they can't do that, and then in addition, C.J. Stroud's got to run when it's wide open.
Yeah.
And if they do that, yes, they could pull an upset. What I've seen out of them in the past 3 games, not very confident.
They're gonna have to. They're gonna have to make some big plays.
Yes.
I mean, some big plays, because I just don't think going blow to blow with Georgia is sustainable.
No.
For a whole game.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to figure out some ways to, and that's why the coaches get paid millions.
Yeah.
And we watch.
Well, I see. When you watch Michigan game and things, they pin their ears back and they're coming at Stroud, and if he steps up in the pocket and takes off and runs for 20 yards, now they got to stop and they got to be responsible in their lanes.
Yeah.
Now he has a few more, maybe a second or 2 more to throw the football.
Yeah.
But he's the one who has to create his opportunities, and he hasn't done that in big games. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll be watching it. And then we'll see what happens with the national championship game.
Yeah, next video will be our last, I believe.
Yes.
It'll be our last, and we'll be picking the national championship game on that is taking place on
January
Monday the 9th.
Yep.
So tune in for that.
So Monday the 3rd is when we'll have to shoot that video and make
Yeah.
the pick. And then we'll post it on Tuesday the 4th. That's it. Hey, I didn't mention at the beginning, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Like the video, leave a comment. And then we'll see you back here for a national championship pick as soon as we figure out who's in the games. You guys take care. Enjoy the playoffs.